Back in 2022, Claire, my co-founder, and I published Simple Scaling, 10 Proven Principles to 10x Your Business. This was steeped in decades of lived experience, almost 40 years combined experience of either co-founding, promoting, leading 6, 7, 8, and 9-figure revenue businesses. My previous role, we led a global scale up from 3 million to almost 100 million in revenue, from 15 people to almost 700 and established offices in 6 continents. What we didn't know when we did that at the time is that actually less than 1% of small and medium-sized enterprises ever do this. Thought that was quite sad because scaling businesses, scaling SMEs are so critically important to our economies, to our communities, society, and the economies at large. Whenever it came to leading the scale up back in 2007, I was a newly promoted CEO. I had no idea what it was to scale a business. In fact, scaling wasn't even a thing back then. It wasn't part of our business lexicon. It only became a thing that we use now that's synonymous with business in probably the last 10, 15 years. So why is actually scaling important? Well, if we take it from a UK context, we don't have figures as beyond the UK, but 5.7 million SMEs exist in the UK, and they're contributing 2.3 trillion pounds worth of revenue to the UK economy. It is significant. 1.3 trillion of that is actually coming from less than 26,000 companies, 0.5% of the total SMEs. So these scaling SMEs of those 26,000 are so critically important to the lifeblood of our economies. We wanted to create a playbook, a roadmap, an instruction manual based on our experience and the experience of others who have been there and done it and scaled businesses successfully. We took a couple of years to speak to other successful scalers across the world. People who are leading businesses like Gymshark, for example, you'll be familiar with, the athletic wear company, Skyscanner. We spoke to Mark Logan, locally Brennan Mooney and Kionos, all leading now multi-billion-dollar scaling companies. And remember that all of those large companies once started as small companies, SMEs, like your own SME. We enshrined and documented the principles that undergirded both our success and the success of other scale-ups to actually create a framework, what we call our 10-principle ScaleX Framework, to support SME leaders like you in actually scaling your business. Because none of us ever go to scaling school, we don't go to CEO school, but yet there's an expectation, especially with founders, with entrepreneurs who have actually passionately devoted their lives to bringing this product or service to a wider audience, to also be competent CEOs and to be competent scaling CEOs. This framework is described as the most comprehensive and holistic framework for organizational scaling that exists. It is lived, it is proven, and I want to step you through it right now. So, 10 principles. The very first principle of our 10-principle ScaleX framework is psyche. An interesting word, but most commonly known as your mindset. It's the mental lens by which we see the world, we interact with the world, we interpret the world. And founded in the work of Carol Dweck, our mindsets can develop and grow. They are not fixed, or certainly they shouldn't be fixed in the context of scaling. In order to scale your business, you must have an empowered mindset. A mindset steeped in a level of awareness as to where actually you are limiting yourself. So begin with an A to E of developing a scaling psyche, an empowered psyche. We either exist in 2 states of mind. One is either an empowered state, the other is a disempowered state. And for scaling, to scale successfully, we want to consistently be in an empowered state. So it begins with awareness of the actual state of mind that we're in. What is limiting our scaling trajectory right now? And we all have self-limiting beliefs, typically programmed from childhood, both from our parents, from our schooling, from the societies that we were growing up in. And the awareness around understanding what is limiting us is so critically important in the context of the bottlenecks that we create in our scaling journey. The second, when we understand what is potentially limiting us and remove those limiting beliefs, is actually belief itself. Self-belief. It's so critically important if you're going to scale a business that you should actually believe what you're trying to do is wholly achievable. Having that self-belief comes from actually the awareness of potentially what's holding you back. It was Henry Ford who socialized the phrase, whether you believe you can or you can't, either way, you will prove yourself right. So believing that you actually can achieve what you want to achieve is so critically important. C of, or A to E of a scaling psyche is control. Controlling our emotions, ultimately control seeds calm, and calm seeds clarity in the context of actually continuing to lead with wonderful composed energy in the context of scaling. So control, responding to the challenges that the scaling will bring as opposed to reacting and being buffeted about by the day to day. The D of our A to E of developing a scaling psyche is discipline. Having self-discipline rooted in great habits, in rituals and routines that actually support us in bringing great energy and actually cultivating a positive scaling psyche. Your habits ultimately will create you. It was Jim Quick that socialized that phrase. First we create our habits and then our habits create us. So ultimately determining which habits currently serve you in the context of scaling. And E is environment. Putting yourself into environments with other like-minded, ambitious leaders who are seeking to do what is actually exceptional when you think that less than 1% of SME leaders actually achieve scale. So ensuring you're in the right environment. I always think of this in the context of actually my own experience in triathlon. I booked a triathlon before I could learn how to swim. Tried to actually practice swimming by buying a DVD from the internet, putting that DVD into my laptop and putting it on the floor at night, going down on the couch, simulating the moves and then going into the pool the next day. It was a disaster, absolute disaster. But I managed to ultimately, without drowning, get my way through my first triathlon. It was only when I joined a triathlon club did I learn how to swim properly, and ultimately my swimming progressed significantly. I always say get yourself into a scaling club, get yourself into a scaling environment, get yourself around other like-minded leaders who are trying to do what you're trying to do, and ultimately create a psyche, a mindset that is conducive to scaling. When you're confident of your psyche, move on to the second principle, which is purpose and vision. And they go hand in glove. So purpose and vision. Purpose, why are you doing what you're doing? It's really important that you actually give meaning to this dream that you have. Because ultimately, a vision without purpose becomes a distracting illusion. At some point, you're going to find this significantly challenging. And if you haven't gone a number of layers deep in why you're doing what you're doing, why this journey, this dream is important, then ultimately you will find yourself empty on the energy reserves to actually navigate the challenges. So why are you doing what you're doing? And ultimately, where are you trying to get to? Would you actually get into the car and just drive without actually, and invite others to get into that car with you and just drive aimlessly? Can you imagine going home to your partner and asking your partner or telling your partner that you've actually booked a holiday? The first question your partner will ask is, where are we going? And the follow-up question, of course, will be, when are we going there? So if you haven't actually set out where you're going in the context of the vision for your business and when you plan to get there, then ultimately you're not going to be inspired to get up every day to pursue this direction of travel, nor, critically important, are you going to inspire others, which brings us to the third principle of scaling, which is people. It was Zig Ziglar said that we don't build a business, we build people, and people build the business. So this is all captured within the inspire phase of our 10 principle ScaleX framework. First, you develop an inspiring psyche. Secondly, you examine and explore why you're doing what you're doing and where you're going to actually navigate and take this wonderful business of yours. We recommend setting out a 10-year moonshot, for example, and then reverse engineer from the 10 years. When you set out an inspiring vision, a vision that you're inspired by, that you're excited by, then you will inspire others to actually want to come on the journey with you. And scaling is not a single player game, it's a multiplayer game. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So in inspiring others, great people want to actually develop themselves in the context of helping you develop yourself and your organization and execute on your dream. So ensuring that your dream is bigger and more expansive than those that you want to come on the journey with you is so critically important. When you have set a compelling purpose and inspiring vision, you will attract the right people to support you on executing on the journey. The execution comes in our next phase, which is our orientate phase. We're developing and conscious of building our scaling psyche. We have articulated a compelling purpose, set clarity of vision, inspired the right people to want to come on this journey with us. And those people, in terms of orientating around that vision, are going to support you in building a plan. One of the greatest challenges that we see in scaling leaders in the context of them not setting a big, bold vision for the future is that they don't have the answers of how to do that. And you don't need to have the answers, because you're going to inspire the right people on this journey, and those people are going to create a plan to support you in executing on your vision for the future. Fifth principle is process. And this is where things become a little less sexy. We love the creative piece, we love the dreamy piece in the inspire phase, but ultimately now we're building the scaffolding of support, which is going to help us put capacity into the business, putting processes and systems that ultimately support what we're trying to do in the context of the scaling ambition. And what I always say to leaders, and I'm leaning on the work of the wonderful Michael Gerber here from the E-Myth fame, wonderful book. If you have a business and that business is wholly dependent on you, then you don't actually have a business, you have a job, and it's the worst job in the world because you are working for a lunatic. What we want to remove here is actually single person dependence, the processes and systems in place that ultimately support the organization regardless of who is managing those processes and systems. The greater and more robust those processes and systems are, then ultimately it frees up capacity, that untapped potential within your people to continue to support the expansion of your vision. The sixth principle is performance. And what I would say here, if you're not keeping score, then you're just practicing. And scaling isn't about practicing, it's about being in the game. So decide on performance metrics that actually are going to support you in the scaling vision that you've actually set. What does great performance look like? Be it customer acquisition, be it profit margins, be it net promoter scores for your team, for your customers. What does great performance look like? And what we support those leaders who actually come into our community and into our program with is actually reverse engineering their 10-year vision down into 3 years. We help them carve out 4 or 5 key themes, undergird those 4 or 5 key themes with 1-year goals, and break those 1-year goals down into objectives and key results. The OKR methodology helps operationalize the vision that you've actually set. OKRs are nothing new, it's not our methodology, developed by Andy Grove in Intel back in the 80s and then socialized by John Doerr in his wonderful book, Measure What Matters. So ultimately, you're going to decide on the performance metrics aligned to your overall goals, aligned to your 3-year vision, aligned to your 10-year moonshot. Moving into our accelerate phase, we're going to get super clear on our proposition. You are either solving a problem or servicing a need. It's as simple as that. What are the customer's pains that ultimately you're trying to mitigate on their behalf with your wonderful product or service? And does everyone know in your business what your proposition is? Too often founders and entrepreneurs, certainly that I've worked with, and I was guilty of this as well, we get emotionally attached to the wonderful product or service that we've actually developed and created. But understand the customer doesn't care. The days of kind of showing up and throwing up by stepping through customers with your brochure and all of the features, people don't care. You need to understand their pains and be that pain detective. Really listen to your customers to understand their needs, their challenges, and ultimately what they're trying to achieve. So either solving their pains or helping them accelerate the trajectory of what they're trying to achieve in their business in terms of their business goals. So get super clear on your proposition and the value that you're actually bringing to your customers. Number 8, in terms of accelerating, and we assert that if you've got a wonderful product or service, then you've an obligation to bring this to the world. So ultimately it's about taking your product or service beyond your existing borders, beyond your existing postcode, into the next county, into the next geographical location, into the next state, whatever that may look like relative to you. But ultimately it's about taking your product or service beyond your existing borders to give as many customers access to that product service as is conceivably possible. The 9th principle is partnerships. And this is about leveraging the power of wonderful partnerships in terms of accelerating your penetration into other regions, into other sectors. Businesses and wonderful, successful scaling businesses are not built alone. Every successful scaling business that we see out there ultimately has someone, whether they're in the foreground or the background, that is supporting the acceleration of this business in that particular region or in that particular sector. The final principle, which leads us back to the inspire phase, is creating a positive growth culture. And this is a keystone principle, and one I learned the very hard way. People will often refer to creating cultures as the soft stuff, the table tennis tables and the ice cream vans. This is much deeper than that. And if you have 2 or more people within your business, then a culture is forming, whether you like it or not. We're advocating is that you decide on the values that you want to see exemplified within this business, and ensure that you model the behaviors, the actions, the words that are aligned and conducive to those values. What is culture? Well, it's really what your people are doing when you're not there. Creating a positive growth culture is foundational in the context of achieving your purpose and vision. In order to get to where you want to go in the context of your vision, you need to know where you are right now. So what we've done is actually created an assessment. It's a really simple assessment. We call it our ScaleX Insights assessment, for you to discern, for you to ascertain where you actually are right now in the context of the ScaleX 10 principles which undergird every scaling success. So what I would encourage you to do is actually click the link below, take that free assessment, and actually make yourself aware of where you are right now in the context of where you want to get to. So if any of this resonates with you, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with somebody who you feel will benefit and value the content that we have shared here with you today. If you wish, you can get the book on Amazon, which is a wonderful starting point, or alternatively, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect, follow us for lots more content in relation to supporting you on scaling with purpose.